G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day and so far a fantastic week. Now, as always, we have a lot to go over. So at the end of the video, we'll look over the maps as we do have a lot of map updates and a lot of interesting updates as well as some predictions as what the next steps may be and why certain areas are being pushed on. We then need to line that up with some strikes that we're seeing as well, both on the strategic level as far as hitting oil refineries and then the tactical level as far as frontline items, tanks being hit or bombs being dropped on then targets, because there is a difference between tactical and strategic in war, although there is some overlap, of course. We need to look at the EU versus Ukraine in the struggle for energy at the moment. Of course, Ukraine stopping some of the flow into the EU, but of course energy with its own energy crisis needs to buy energy back off the EU, and we'll look at what Eastern Europe is saying about this. We need to look at something I've been sent as well of how people are feeling around some of the different messaging that we see, and then we'll line some more things up. But where I want to start is 2 days ago we saw, or maybe 2 or 3 days ago, we then saw a unknown drone strike Tel Aviv. Now, what we do know is that this was most likely fired by the Houthi rebels from Yemen, and we do know that it bypassed many different top-of-the-line Israeli systems. And what we do presume too, that this had some low-level flying, potentially then terrain tracking. Now, 24 to 48 hours after we saw this, we then see a new unknown drone appear over Kyiv in Ukraine. Now, in the video of that day, I speculated that these drones could potentially be the same type, or at least using lessons learnt by the I country collecting data across multiple different theatres. Now, the I country, I can't say it because it is YouTube. If you're wondering why you don't see as much reporting about what's going on there as what's going on in Ukraine and Russia, well, no YouTuber can make videos on that without being restricted, it seems, at least from my experience. So, of course, no one's going to then talk about it online, not those who make their living off it. Anyway, I think with what I've seen today, I may be one step closer to maybe being correct. So we then see this. This came out from Defense Express Ukraine. The factory in the Russian Federation patented a copy of the Kasef kamikaze, which is being shining at the Houthi rebels. Now, we continue here. The Russian company, Zvodsignal, has patented its drone, which visually resembles this drone by eye development, which is used by then these rebels, of course, being vibration or welding of a special glue, and then they're pulling apart this new drone that they've seen on the ground here. Now, with drones, we see many different drones come and go very quickly. Remember, I've put a note here for then the cardboard drone that came out of Australia, and there's a lot of problems, not with the drone, there's a lot of problems legally between the use of it and then copies, analogs of that drone. But can you see where I'm drawing then this conclusion? And this is part of my further exploration into then the I country, its proxies, and its relationship with Russia and China. Personally, I see that destabilization in the Middle East and the disruption of shipping routes benefits Russia and China more so than the West, and it's actually to more so the West's detriment due to the alternatives seem to benefit the global South. And this is not only done economically, but morally. And what we've seen over the recent months since October last year in Israel has pushed many countries away from the West very quickly and may do trade with other more friendly nations or nations that they see fit more of their global outlook and world order. So let's just have a quick look at this. I'm not going to go over it too much, but just on the very base level, we see then where these vessels are rerouting from Asia then through to Europe if they're not going through the Suez Canal, of course making this trip a lot longer. But this isn't the only other way. There's also ways then through the Middle East, up then through the Caspian Sea into Russia as well, and that travels through Iran too. Then we see just on those shipping routes, Russia offers Arctic route as an alternative to then the Suez Canal. Of course, Suez Canal, Houthis hitting ships in there, insurance goes up, things get more expensive to go through, or they have to go around, things get more expensive. Hey, look, guess who has then an alternative? Anyway, the NSR, a shipping route through the Arctic Ocean, would be very tough without climate change thawing the Arctic ice. Now, whether you are belief or non-believer in climate change, what we do know is that the climate is changing. The argument here is whether it is caused by man or it is cyclical, but we do know the weather is changing and warming up north. So we do know that Arctic ice is in some areas there reducing, while in other areas then increasing. But therefore, shipping routes in the coming decades across the north, across the top of Russia, will then be more viable. But we see here, to open up the NSR, Russia is building 2 additional nuclear-powered icebreakers, of course, then to take through regular ships. India, one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and of course a country of well over 1 billion people, and I think very underestimated as far as future global influence, has said it will add to our energy security. This is from the first secretary of the head of economic and commercial wing, the Embassy of India. So if you pull all this together, what may be happening? Well, we know where friendships may be coming closer to then cause some issues for then unfriendly countries, and then countries who are either neutral or want to trade may look then other ways. And I believe the West has sped this up more than anyone. And of course, I think what we're seeing with Israel has sped that up exponentially as well. Now, Twitter has been in a meltdown, not only since then Trump got shot, but now since we've seen Biden's withdrawal, and of course Trump emerging as the favourites. Now, what I will say is there's plenty of accounts on Twitter and YouTube who push their own agenda more so than telling you what is going on. So just keep your head on a swivel. You see a lot of people pushing really hard against Trump mainly at the moment. The funniest one is people calling out his age when 2 days ago they were fully backing someone older and less coherent. So what I'm just saying is, you behind the scenes, you don't exactly know what their agenda is. So just keep your head on a swivel. But Twitter's been in a meltdown over Donald Trump Jr. then posted this, of course, reaching a massive audience. Now, I actually took this screenshot 15 hours ago. I should have screenshotted it to see whatever the count is up to here. But of course, with Biden's phone and Zelensky then calling him, and not many people, well, no, a lot of people obviously found it very funny, but a lot of people didn't find that funny at all. Now, what we've spoken about yesterday was we spoke about the different messaging that we're seeing from Kyiv and from other nations around then a peace conference at the end of the year and potentially ending the, quote, hot war, and how that would then look if there was some sort of negotiation. Would we see a territory change? What rules would be in for neutrality, this and that, and things that need to be taken into account. Like we do say, is Russia currently hold then the initiative. Now, if the war is looking like it's going to end at the end of the year, are we going to see some Hail Mary attempts to draw back ground? If Trump is the favourite, will we try and see then Zelensky, while the Democrats, the more friendly Democrats, are in power, will we try and see a deal struck with Russia before Trump will get into power for maybe a more friendly government to the Kremlin after? We don't know. The good thing is time is going to show us. The difficult thing Zelensky has in his hands at the moment, and this is from the Kyiv mayor, is he either needs to have a major offensive, what means you're going to lose tens or hundreds of thousands of men clearing that territory, or you're going to negotiate and lose that territory and go against the promises you've said, or I guess the other way is to hold a vote and see where then the people feel, either in limited plebiscite or a referendum there. Anyway, this is what I was sent across from someone as well. If the front line is frozen and a new border is drawn, however this would look, there would definitely be a sense of this could have been achieved 2 years ago and tens of thousands of men ago, because we've seen the net change very little. If anything, the net change over the past 18 months has actually been in Russia's favour. Not only sold false hope and promises from our leadership, but also leaders of EU, NATO, especially NATO and Johnson's influence on early peace deals, and now we're seeing suggestions about land concessions. As one of the guys said on your podcast, I think there would be a few months of relief and celebration because the war has ended, But once that's over and the true permanent cost sets in, I think there would be a growing distaste. And we've speculated of how that would then look. Of course, similar probably will happen in Russia to a degree. We know Russia's likely not going to lose any ground from this war, but they've had large losses. Once that sets in of how costly this war was, what did it achieve in the end? Its initial goals have not been achieved and likely will not be achieved. What will then the populace think? But don't think that that can't happen the other way either. Ukraine has some very powerful groups with very strong nationalist ideology as well, who have had large losses and huge sacrifices on the promise from NATO, the EU, from the Ukrainian government of the full return of all territories. Now, let's have a look at these power issues that are going on. We reported a couple of days ago that the pipelines running through Ukraine are going to be switched off that feed into Czech Republic, Hungary, and Slovakia. Now, these countries were meant to find then an alternative to this. This hasn't been found yet to fill their needs. The problem is these countries then supply power back to Ukraine during their energy crisis. So this guy's the spokesman for the Prime Minister of Hungary, but he's speaking on what then the Foreign Minister has said. Foreign Minister announced that Hungary and Slovakia have initiated a consultation process with the EU against Ukraine for halting oil supplies. Speaking in Brussels, he stressed that the Ukrainian decision jeopardizes energy security for both countries, given that they rely heavily on Russian oil via the Druzhba pipeline. He highlighted that the halt of the Lukoil shipments, which provide a significant portion of Hungarian and Slovakian oil imports, threatens the energy supply. Despite temporary solutions, long-term stability cannot be ensured without resolving this issue. He noted, this decision is unacceptable and incomprehensible from a country aspiring to join the EU. It needs to be pointed out that Ukraine is not in the EU, they're not in NATO, they're aspiring to join these two. The minister mentioned that this move violates the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement, which prohibits disruption of energy transit. Hungary and Slovakia have jointly requested the European Commission to initiate a consultation process. If unresolved, the issue may escalate to arbitration, potentially impacting EU-Ukraine agreements. Now, in this, Ukraine rely on Slovakia, Hungary for energy, and we're going to look at exactly how much and the increasing amount here too. But what I will say is don't think that this is done solely by Ukraine alone. The EU has been looking for ways to mould and shape Slovakia and Hungary's outlook on this war, from asking Viktor Orban to leave the room so then they get a 100% vote, through to many different things. Don't think this was Ukraine acting alone. I believe this is, I don't want to say blackmail or holding it hostage, but there's more, I believe there's more to this of EU countries behind the scenes. Ukraine's not going to be doing this behind themselves solo without then talking to way more friendly pro-Ukrainian ministers within the upper echelon of the EU to Slovakia and Hungary. There's more at play than behind this. Now, this is from Hungary today. Ukraine imported by far the most electricity from Hungary in June, bringing its share to 42%. So 42% of the energy going into Ukraine is from Hungary, where, of course, that oil has just been cut off. Slovak and Romanian imports are 17%, I believe, each, is it what they're saying? Polish is 16% and Moldovan at 8%. What we know is Russia has been striking the energy facilities in Ukraine, both distribution, terminal substations, as well as then the thermal power plants too, and creating an energy crisis. Of course, this can create political crisis as well in other areas, like we're seeing with Hungary, Slovakia, Ukraine. This is one of the things, is don't underestimate where asymmetrical campaigns may be happening, like we spoke about with the I country right at the beginning of this, using then proxies to have an effect on global trade. Don't think that things aren't. The world is one big series of cogs. You have tactical elements. Tactical war of Russia is, say, the guys on motorbikes with guns going front line. The strategic element is all then above that, and this all comes into it. Same with Ukraine. The tactical element is getting leopards on the front line and shooting at guys. The strategic element is things like the sanctions, things like friendships and relationships with other countries. So we need to look at that step above too. But don't ever underestimate how effective this can be. And just because you may think the Russians are dumb, barbarian, blah, 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 they've had very successful campaigns like this before, and I believe currently are. The severe electric market situation in Ukraine, a drastic drop in production capacity, and a surge in demand during the summer heatwave. It's very, very hot in Ukraine at the moment. Energy Minister to say the other day that Ukraine was in talks with neighbouring countries to further increase Ukrainian electricity imports. Anyway, and then from the end of March, with the intensification of Russian attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, net Hungarian commercial electricity exports to Ukraine surged in early June. Hungary has been in virtually continuous net export position to Ukraine. Of course, reaching 35 to 38 degrees, so over 100 F if you're in Freedom Land, if you're in NASCAR land, and it's increased for cooling, of course, aircon. Anyone who pays electricity bills knows about bloody air conditioning. In addition, there was a rise in Hungarian electricity imports from Austria and Slovakia, and some of this may have been leaving the country for Ukraine or Romania, where some of the electricity probably also flowed onto Ukraine. So Hungary may be importing and exporting out again, but this is through the interconnected European electricity market and the physical interoperability of border sections. Hungary has managed to achieve by far the largest outflow of electricity to Ukraine in recent weeks. A lot of this is actually due to their solar capacity there. So this is something that will be growing. It'd be very interesting to see where this then heads. I know some contracts are up. I know there's more behind the scenes to this, but at the end of the day, you can see where there is a riff starting here. And this, I think, actually lines in with what Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, said. And this is interesting, and we need to take into account everything said regardless of what you think of the individual. Next point is nuclear security. Now, this is in Zelensky's 10-point peace plan. Number one is nuclear security. And I'd never questioned why that was not energy security, it was nuclear security. And he points out, at least in Lavrov's opinion, that is because if it was just energy security, there would be questions raised about then Gazprom. I wondered why he left energy security there and took out energy. He kept the energy security there too. Well, we discussed it had blown up the Nord Streams, as he says there. But I think this could too then actually go into the security that Hungary and Slovakia are saying around their electricity and how expensive it's going to be for individuals in their countries as well. So I think that is an interesting point to look at overall as well. Now, here we are. We're going to look at the maps, and let's get we're going to look at some strikes, and that'll link to then the maps. So there's been a number of Ukrainian drones go into Russia overnight. They're saying 75, and Russia is saying that they down 47, which seems like a more reasonable number than the typical 100%. Again, we don't know. Like I always say, numbers from either MOD, massive grain of salt. Why would they lie? Well, you know how the propaganda war works. Of course, it's very obvious to see how that would be then beneficial. But we do have some footage of this. So one of the drones has gone into the Topsy, then oil refinery. Now, this funnily looks exactly like footage we have actually seen before. This oil refinery has been struck before. It actually hit around here, I believe, last time. And then we see then this drone pass over and then come in onto its last run. Now, in the background of this footage, you can hear an amount of shooting and then a successful strike here. The amount of damage, again, I don't know. It's impossible to tell from this footage, but at least some of them got through, but it did seem like a lot also have been intercepted. So here is Ukraine, the center, the capital of Kyiv. Let's come up into then, the red areas occupied since 22, the purple since 2014. That'll be important to know in a second. Come up into the north. Nothing has changed in here, but what we do know is Russia is dropping a hell of a lot of munitions in Vovchansk itself, from Fab 500s to Fab 3000s, as well on then the western side here of Lipsy as well. And today is no different. We have then footage here of Russia dropping a number of glide munitions into Vovchansk. We can see at least 4 then striking on one area. Typically, I would say that these are then Fab 500s. There's been a lot of speculation around what is a better effect on target, a single 3000 or multiple 500s. But you need to then take into account too, not only the tactical benefit, but also the strategic benefit, because the psychological impact of a 3000 has a lot more, as well as singular penetration, maybe more against a bunker too. But I'd say for most application, dropping them in a linear formation like this at 500s is going to be more effective. But who am I to say? Now, we have seen another Abrams has been taken out by a drone here too. I'm not keeping count, but it's got to be close to 50% of the Abrams we have confirmed hits on at this point in time. We see then the drone, we presume, then has cut out, and then we see multiple hits and then smoking there. So we presume at least the ammo's gone, but out in the middle there, it's going to then be hit by other things and will be then at a loss of a system. Now, I think we put too much emphasis on the industrial capacity to make more tanks. I've spoken about this, that if tanks were the be-all, end-all of this war, we would see Ukraine requesting more tanks over long-range strategic weapon systems as well as fighter jets. It'd be a lot easier. There's more of them then available. So I do believe we put too much emphasis on when, the capacity is only this and this is how many they're losing. I believe the influence of tanks in this war has reduced throughout the war due to landmines, due to the terrain fighting in, as well as, of course, the mud coming in, as well as, of course, the FPV and artillery that has got significantly better through this war. As we've seen that increase, we've seen the operability and the use case for tanks then dropping away. There's still a case for them, but don't think once there's a shortage of tanks or older tanks coming in that that's going to then be the be-all and end-all of war. This is not war 50 years ago. Now, where we need to look at is where that was actually then hit. Now, that Abrams was taken out around Prohez. Now, this is where we've seen the majority of these tanks taken out is actually on the Avdiivka front. Remember, the first ones we saw were then in Berdyachi. We had seen some footage near Olivka of these Abrams firing into then the factory on the outskirts of Avdiivka too. So they're definitely fighting in here. And what that has told us through the past is if Ukraine's using its most advanced tanks, I'll probably put a Leopard above it, but it's those tanks in this area is they are putting in more high-end weapon systems to try and hold these areas. Now, let's have a look and see if anything has actually changed in here. On this map, no. But if we then come onto the Syriac map, he shows just in Prohez here that Russia has made some amount of ground, and this working envelopment then here that Ukraine is pulling out of. Russian army advanced west of Prohez and began attack towards the locality of Vovchi. The result, Ukrainian army began withdrawal from positions on the eastern shore of the Vovcha River. So pulling back out of here. The river runs, of course, through here. And this envelopment too is from yesterday that is said to be closed up from Syriac on then this front. Now, let's have a look at a couple of other areas. Now, let's look at Pishani up then the top of this map here. So what we can see is our first movement that we're looking at on this map is just a northern fill-in through then the village of Pishani here by the Russian forces. Syriac have a bit of a breakdown of what he believes will then occur here. Of course, you can see where the front is pushing out on this spire like we are then seeing. The Russian army began to advance towards the locality of Kolesnizkivka, located on the eastern bank of the Oskil, so just here. The Ukrainian army began to reinforce positions in this locality, as well as the neighbouring Hroshkivka, aware of the serious consequences that the loss of this place would entail. Pishani allowed the Russians to create a direct spearhead to the west with the aim of dividing the armed forces into two zones, the Kupiansk Bank and the Liman Bank. In case of success, the Russians will begin to press from several axes on Ukrainian troops, with the rear guard heavily threatening by finding the Oskil in the rear, hindering logistics in the east, similar to what happened to the Russian armed forces in Kherson during the autumn of spring 22. So dividing in half, and then your logistics become much, much more difficult. So if the Russians are able to get out into here by using the Oskil as a natural barrier, you've essentially cut off these two areas as far as supply. We know that Russia really want then Kupiansk in here as the main center hub of a lot that is happening there. Now, let's move our way down the map until we see a change, and we'll come into New York, and what we can just see is that Russia has gained one of then the tree lines in here today, but very minor changes. Let's then have a look at the Syriac, because this does tell a very different story here. So We look then on the Surak. Now, he's showing around the same area. This is then the tree line, but it's also showing that the grey zone here has then filled out, but also that out to the northeast, that Russia has made more territory here as well. Of course, closing up between Pivdeni and New York, but that's not the only update we have then today. We have on this other front here in Pivdeni out then to the south, we have that Russia is filling out some of the localities down in here as well. Again, showing basically where the grey zone is then in red by at least Suryak's map. We have one more update in here. Now, what we actually need to do is have a look at this. We'll talk about it, but we actually need to rotate it to get a better idea of then what this is saying. Now, this isn't perfect, but we have a look, bring this up. This is then New York. This is then the Toretsk front. Now, what he is talking about is the closing up between these and how this spire will grow out into Toretsk itself. Again, this is what Surak is saying. I'm not sure if that will be the goal or more once Chasiv Yar comes under control, or if it comes under pressure on Konstantinivka and more of an development. Again, not sure. But after the last events, it's clear that the Russian forces look to capture of the two territories adjacent to Zalizny and Pivsheny. So in here, which will prepare for the fall of these two populations. Simultaneously, the troops will move towards New York, joining the troops there, and will force a complete fall of 2014 line in this sector. This is the remainder 2014 line. This is actually the last 2014 line that remains in where Ukraine are up to. Subsequently, the assault toward Toretsk will begin. The proximity of the city will allow the Russian assault to continue from the south through the forest and the central avenue, seeking the heights of this and this in the mines. A parallel advance will be made near Sherbinivka. So up in Sherbinivka in here. The fall of Toretsk, the Russian army will have a free road to Konstantinivka from the south. However, Chasiv Yar and Osheretny axis will continue to play a leading role in the seizure of the territory below the H32 highway. So this is the highway that we keep then talking about. This highway here is critical for Konstantinivka and also critical because up into here leads, of course, Chasiv Yar. Now, the road through in here roughly was cut off as well as the intersection that connects down in here. So this road has had a lot of supply issues both ways in and out. So the capture of in here is going to put more and more threat. And of course, this Osheretny front, if this is able to then capture, so I'm drawing everywhere, able to capture, then this in here will create a logistical problem for Toretsk itself. So you can see as this is then shaping up, it's causing more issues. Chasiv Yar putting threat on Konstantinivka, logistical supply not only to Konstantinivka but down south as well, and things having to go a long way around through Kramatorsk, Georgivka, and all right, so keep an eye on what is exactly happening on this front. Now, there's one more that he then writes about this. 2014, Ukrainian army's defences on the Toretsk front crumble. I must admit my mistake in overestimating the defensive capabilities of the Ukrainian armed forces on this front, which was considered a secondary axis used by the Russians to divert Ukrainian forces while developing the logistical cut between Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka. So that logistical cut is that intersection we speak about. The situation is now quite different. The axis has become one of the main ones of this Russian summer offensive, which will seek the capture of the entire urban agglomeration of Toretsk and surrounding towns, which may have the following evolution. So as we spoke about, that links into what he is showing then here. Now, this is one thing we have spoken about, is things can chop and change. And if there is a weak point, then it could move and that become the main axis. And I think that was half of what Russia was doing up in Volchansk. They had early gains and then hit heavy resistance. But if they didn't, I believe Russia would have moved more forces to make this then a primary axis. In the beginning, it wasn't. And I think they were just feeling it out. And I believe that is what is happening down in here, that it wasn't the primary, it was to draw troops away. But due to maybe a lack of defenses or tunneling under and getting in behind the lines, potentially has become now one of the primary axes. Now let's have a look down Ugledar here. We do see an amount of ground made then by the Russians on this front. This isn't the first time of the past few weeks we have then seen this. This is getting backed up. by Syriac maps moving in the same direction. The contingent advance towards Vodani made new advances west of Soroka, so this is putting problems on the supply routes through here as Russia advance up, and Konstantinivka Mark II through to Vuhledar may then be soon cut at least by fire control on that road. Come north just a little bit in Mariinka front. Now, this is somewhere that the maps are showing significantly different. So this is Mariinka here, this is Hrovkia. We can see by then where the reservoirs are. Now, Syriac is showing right up into this Maximilianivka that Russia is making ground out here, well outside of even then the grey zone. So it's saying 30% of this. Again, with claims like that, grain of salt until more maps are showing this over multiple sources. And Stamorsky, Uruzani front, we did see this move a few days ago. And now we're seeing more movements, at least by then, Syriac. So he's saying that just along where this grey zone is, he's showing that this has now been filled in by the Russian forces just straight across from Uruzani out to the east there. I think trying to then fatten up where they've made this spire out. Now, the last map update we have to come is right down then into Krinky. Of course, Krinky is where the bridgehead, the very costly bridgehead, was held for a long time by Ukraine. It's still unknown whether the losses here and the MIA here was, I guess, strategically worth the losses put onto the Russian forces, but by losing the bridgehead across here, strategically is then a big loss. Now, let's have a look then here. We can see that showing that Russia is moving into more of the islands in here. During the last 2 weeks, Russian army began new operations to secure the islands of the Dnieper River following the loss of Krinky by the Ukrainian army. This operation is possible due to the reduction of Ukrainian resources on the other shore, destined from the north and east. However, the creation of a bridgehead for an eventual operation towards Kherson should not be considered, but rather the creation of a buffer zone to prevent another Ukrainian operation, which seems more and more improbable every day. So, like I've said, I think the biggest loss for Russia during the entire war, as far as pieces of singular ground, was this over on Kherson, where they had a large amount of ground, 40 k's deep, if not more, when they got up into some of these areas. The pushback, the withdrawal back here under fire in late 22, getting back across here in any capacity at this point would be unbelievably costly. But don't add that one way. Getting Ukraine another bridgehead, not a bridgehead of presence of soldiers and maybe a few vehicles. I'm meaning a bridgehead that can expand, because any more than a few kilometers here, your drones are out of range from the other way, your artillery is out of range the other way, and you can't then have logistical support. To have a real push here, you need to create a bridgehead that spans out at least, say, 10 kilometers, and then get armor everything across and continue expanding that and protect wherever your crossing is in here. So either north or south crossings here, everything is possible, but would be unbelievably costly. But again, we will see, as many have speculated that Russia will try and have something here to follow this axis of what they originally were, because they got up into here to try and connect with its forces and then resupply in Transnistria as well to try and blockade Odessa, because any other way into Odessa is basically impossible. Anyway, legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day. I hope you're looking after yourselves. If you'd like to support me, there's links down below, but never feel obliged. Have a great day. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.